Hi, Stephanie. So glad to have you with us to talk about curriculum review and the curriculum review cycle that you're overseeing. Could you start by just introducing yourself and a little bit about your context?
Yes, absolutely. So I am Stephanie Griffin. I am the assistant head of school for academics at Trinity Episcopal School. We are a tiny K-8 school nestled in the uptown of Charlotte. So we take advantage of the city as our classroom quite a bit. And we are in the middle of our first very robust curriculum review cycle this year.
Awesome. I know that you've been at the school for a while as an academic dean, and you're new to this role and are really thinking strategically and robustly in terms of systems that can support the work that you're doing broadly, not just in curriculum, but in other areas. And you were part of this curriculum review PLC in the past and really found the idea of a North Star surprisingly compelling for your work with your faculty and your teams. Can you talk a little bit about what that has meant for your journey?
Yeah, it was one of those things that when I first sat down to design our review cycle, I hadn't necessarily thought about. And then it really resonated with me coming out of the workshop in the fall. And we spent our first meeting together as a team before we even talked about our hopes and dreams for a curriculum review, to just establish what our current instructional state was and what were non-negotiables for us in the process. And we used that conversation to really come up with what we're calling, or what we've deemed, our North Stars, the things that we want to continue to practice as literacy teachers, regardless of any curriculum that we choose. So an example of that would be our workshop model. We're a constructivist, progressive school, and we believe firmly in this idea of having students engage in discovery-based learning, constructivist learning, and to that end, we embrace the workshop model as an instructional method. And we have promised our teachers and have worked with them to say, regardless of what curriculum we select, that is a North Star that we will protect and hold dear in the work that we do moving forward, because it's mission aligned and part of our educational philosophy.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. And even though the example you gave was like around literacy and workshop model, grounded even deeper was clarity at Trinity that you are a constructivist, student-centered, progressive school, and that really is going to inform on the curricular work as well as the process around it. So one of the cool things that Trinity used to do was these collaborative improvement visits. I know you would invite folks from other schools, peer schools, to come and do like a mini accreditation by department, bring some outside perspectives, give you feedback and some assessment on a kind of a 5-year cycle by department. And you've shifted that to something that will allow you a little bit more internally to get some data-informed curricular evaluation in place. Can you share with us your 5-year cycle or your overall approach to a comprehensive curriculum review at Trinity?
Yeah, so our school has absolutely loved the idea of the collaborative improvement visit process. And we've done it with academic programs and other departments. And we are still thinking about how we might integrate it into a broader cycle. But what we noticed about the work is that it really didn't give us a robust evaluation or analysis of actual curriculum and implementation. And so what we've done, and I'll share my screen, is we've tried to think through, and this is very nascent for us, this is new for all of our folks. We've tried to think really carefully about what an evaluation cycle might look like over a 5-year period, so that our curriculum remains relevant, research and evidence aligned, and at the end of the day serves the needs of our students. And so we thought about it in 4 main steps. Year 1 being around data collection, year 2 being around actually auditing and evaluating the curriculum we have at hand. And then year 3 being this year where we sort of have 3 diverging paths. We might feel very affirmed in the curriculum that we have, and therefore can move ahead and continue with implementation. We might notice that we need to make some adjustments midway, and can make those tweaks as needed, or we might decide that we need to take a full adoption of a new curriculum and dig into that work together as a team. And then the final phase is the following years. And we believe in the importance of having more than 1 year for implementation, where teachers are getting practice implementing the curriculum. They are doing some data collection and benchmarking to see if it's meeting their needs, to see if it's working for the teachers themselves, and really getting vested in that work. And then they begin this cycle over again. And so we've started this work with our literacy team. And you can see here, again, this is all like a really rough draft. But we really started thinking through data collection last year, noticing that we needed some work in our phonics, noticing the national narrative around literacy, and then also just listening to our students and our families and the feedback they were giving us about literacy. And so we're in our audit and evaluation now with the goal of adopting and implementing in 24-25. And it's been a really revelatory process for us, but it's one where I really think building out time for teachers to implement over the course of several years will help us determine whether or not it is the right curriculum for us. And then we've also built in this sort of benchmark for us where we can say, if it is working at the end of 5 years, when we go to do this again, we'll feel affirmed, or we can go through that curriculum review cycle once more to see if we need to adjust or adopt something different.
This is fantastic, Stephanie. So I see that you're always, every department or discipline is somewhere in their own process, but you're not trying to do everybody's doing the same thing at the same time. We're not auditing or evaluating 3 different departments. You're kind of cycling through, leaving space for some focus where it needs to be not only your energy, but that of teachers. I'm also thinking about how having a set cycle, actually, could you go to that first slide again? Having a set cycle that people can get their mind around makes it kind of part of the culture. Like, this is what we do, continuous improvement. And if you love a curriculum, great, know it's also going to be reviewed. And if you don't love it, don't worry. We'll get to it when we get to it.
And I think having a process in place has made me in my first year of this role, or trying to get a process in place, is a priority for me in my first year of this role, because it begins to normalize change, and not change like a ton of change, but it begins to normalize this idea or culture of it's okay for us to continually check in and decide, is this working? Is this not working? And pivot if we need to, and really helping teachers get comfortable with that, with the idea of change, of evaluating our work just to make sure it's serving our needs and the needs of our students is I think going to make the work of all of the academic leaders in our community much more rigorous, and also just a little easier, because right now change feels hard, because it is.
Yeah. And you have,
I think that will be important.
And yeah, and the not only normalizing it, but giving it a structure and a process. I know that on some of these other slides, you're starting to, as you said, early days, but starting to write out what are the steps or the guiding questions that we're going to use in year 1. What are the guiding questions in year 2? And you may maybe click down to 1 or 2 of those slides so folks can see. So that
we are really trying to use inquiry as a frame of mind in this work, so that teachers are experiencing that and then can use inquiry-based or constructivist learning in their own classroom. So we're really trying to also align our work as in teams with our educational philosophy that we hope teachers are implementing with fidelity in their spaces.
Love that modeling. And once you have action steps that are appropriate for your school for each part of the cycle, it's just lather, rinse, repeat. And people know what to expect. Maybe stop sharing your screen for a minute and let's think about a slightly different context. On the one hand, I could see this making a ton of sense for something like a math program where you talk about I know you're doing a literacy task force right now in the adopt part of your ELA review. There's a lot of folks, including at your school, where maybe middle school science, the curriculum is kind of whatever teachers are doing, and we want that to be aligned and coordinated and reviewed as well. How are you all thinking about places where the curriculum is not connected tightly to a program, but it's really more about teacher-generated content?
Yeah, I think that tends to happen more for us in science and social studies. And I was a social studies teacher at Trinity for a good bit before I moved into this role. And what's interesting too is like our lower school, our literacy review process is focused specifically on the lower school. And so there are a couple ways to think about it. First, we had to decide, are we going to do a K-8 literacy curriculum review, or are we going to just focus on one division and see how that might pull up into another or pull down into one? And so I think that's a really important step for folks to think about, is like, what capacity do my teachers have? Do I have? And how might I see the vertical alignment working once we adopt something in either division? But for some of these curricula where we don't have something that's purchased, or an anchor curriculum where we really have content material that is more teacher generated, we actually are probably going to do something that is more K-8, focusing specifically on vertical alignment as it relates to themes and topics. So with social studies, for instance, we really want to make sure that we are hitting all of the topics or subject areas within social studies in a way that spirals effectively over the course of their K-8 journey, in a way that ensures we aren't perpetuating any misconceptions about the historical narrative, and then also making sure that we don't have any big gaps for students. And so that process is going to be a little bit more iterative, but I think it's going to be one that will be more beneficial to have K-8 with a real heavy emphasis on vertical alignment. And then once we've really pinned down the subject areas that we want to focus on or spiral in within that discipline, we then look to see, okay, what supplemental materials do we need to ensure our teachers have access to so that they can execute effectively? And then
I see that actually fitting right into your cycle, because the big part, the heavy lift there is actually in the year one, the audit or the data collection, which is in this case, like really getting teachers to document their curriculum in a way that's not lesson plan day by day, but where we can see what those themes, those topics are. And I know you were using before COVID, the UBD framework, thinking about, just encouraging folks to think about what is the template through which we're going to have conversations about not what we teach, but I like to think what students learned, and do that. So, Stephanie, there's a lot more. I know you and I connect frequently and have these conversations. We could keep talking about what you're doing at Trinity, but thank you so much for sharing a little bit about that 5-year review cycle. And if you have any closing wisdom for folks thinking about this work, we'd love to hear it.
I think for me, the biggest learning curve has been learning to listen very carefully, not to the curriculum, not to the subject area, but to listen to the teachers and think about how to leverage their expertise and their voices and honor their feelings in the process, because it's very easy to come in and say, this is the cycle and these are the steps, and it's really clear cut and really organized, and we're going to go through it step by step. And the reality is that we have 13 humans on our task force who are doing incredible work in their classrooms and then are volunteering their time and expertise to the process itself. And they have a lot of investment in the work that they're doing, and they want to get it right. And so for me, a lot of my work has been taking a step back and just trying to listen to how people are feeling as we move through the process, and to not be afraid to pivot when needed to ensure that it is successful when all is said and done.
That's great. Yeah, process is only as effective as how people engage with it and the results. And so that's great wisdom. Thank you, Stephanie.
Yeah, thanks, Mira.